Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Basu and Godin Notebook, this Monday edition. We're February 17, and both Arpin and I are live from Boston for the second half of the Four Nations Faceoffs. Arpin, so far it's a fun tournament.
I think it's been fantastic, and honestly, it's we have a tendency in hockey to just kind of poo-poo things. We're very poo-poo-y people. So
Yeah.
that's hard to say, but everyone's it's made up and this, that. It's always like complaining. It happened the last World Cup. Constant complaint. Oh, Team Europe and Team North America. It's all made up. Well, Team North America turned into like this iconic creation that everyone adored, and this thing. Fine, it's not perfect. It's not best on best. It's not all the best players are here, but it's still the best players from these four countries playing against each other. It's fantastic. And so I just wish people would give things a chance every now and then. It's like, who didn't love Canada USA on Saturday night? It was great theater at the Bell Center. Honestly, the best national anthem I've heard in that building ever.
Yeah.
We've heard it booed in that building, so it's like, it was not booed. The other anthem was booed, of course, but not that one. But I mean, that's one of the great games that building has ever hosted.
Yeah.
Honestly.
That's a fair point. So,
yeah.
The Montreal Canadiens will be back practicing, tomorrow. So there's going to be a lot more to discuss on the Montreal Canadiens front very soon. For the time being, we decided that for this episode, we would go heavily on the mailbag because it was an opportunity for our subscribers to send us a ton of questions. So we will get to that shortly. But since we're at the Four Nations tournament, it's interesting to wonder if guys like Suzuki or Caufield, had they been selected for that tournament, how do you think they would fare, on their respective teams? Do you see, for example, a guy like Nick Suzuki doing better or having a more effective role than any of the forwards that are playing for Canada right now?
I think Canada's issue at this tournament, and we'll see how they approach it for the Olympics, but Saturday night, listen, I know Sidney Crosby's injured, but there are three golden generation guys. Sid, Drew Doughty, Brad Marchand all looked old.
Yeah.
I mean, Sid's playing with one arm, and he had a tremendous game against Sweden. But those three guys look like it was tough keeping up, and all of them have mitigating except for Marchand. Marchand's mitigating circumstances that his season has been rough in general. Drew Doughty's obviously just coming back from injury. Sid is injured, but it's interesting that Brock Nelson's basically the only kind of older guy the U.S. took, and so when I look at those three guys, and everyone looked at Seth Jarvis. I think Seth Jarvis has been pretty good, frankly. I mean, I didn't think he's been, but he doesn't have much of a role. Like, if Nick Suzuki were to play on Team Canada, I'm not sure. John Cooper's a big fan of his. Has always admired his game. Has always spoken up highly of it. I don't know how big of a role he would have had on this team, especially with the lack of penalties.
Yeah.
I could see him being a penalty killer for this team, but the penalties have been a non-factor. Special teams have not really been all that important. So I would have a tough time seeing Nick Suzuki playing a significant role. And for the same reason, I don't think, even regardless of special teams, I don't think Cole Caufield had a role to play on Team USA the way their wingers are playing in this tournament.
Yeah, I think though the style of play of Suzuki is seems to be fitting pretty well with the way Canada plays. And you look at the number of guys who are really effective on both sides of the ice, who are really responsible defensively. It's been a real focus on that team and the way that they built it. When you look at Reinhardt, Marner, Point, you mentioned Jarvis, but I mean
Sorelli,
Stone,
Hagel.
obviously, Hagel's, all of them. They're it's such a good team defensively, and arguably it's probably a facet of the American team that was a little bit underestimated. But you see a guy like Austin Matthews might not have done a whole lot offensively, but defensively he really impressed against Canada. So I think that Suzuki would fit well there. There's an opening. There might be a couple of openings for the Olympics next year. For a couple of those guys, you mentioned Brad Marchand. I think this is the tournament that will show that there will be better options than him in the future. And it will be a matter of saying, well, who's going to be the best candidate for that? Because yes, Suzuki and Scheifele have been left off, and so has Robert Thomas. But very soon you'll have Celebrini and Bedard knocking at the door too. So
I think they'll be at the Olympics. I think those two guys will be at the Olympics. So it gets even harder in many ways because most of the team here will be in Milan. And then you have to work Celebrini and Bedard into it. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Nick's got to see. The thing with Nick is, we've always Montreal. The market has been obsessed with this notion of a point a game player. Nick is now a point a game player, but a point a game player doesn't cut it anymore. That's it's good. It's very good even, but it used to be if you were a point a game player, you were a top 15 scorer in the league. You're not even close to top 15 at a point a game anymore. So it's like the math has changed in that regard. Now I think if Nick Suzuki is a point a game player or becomes like a 90-point player, that's fantastic. Like with everything he does and his all around game, that makes him a very, very effective player. But it doesn't get him into the upper crust where he becomes a no doubter member of Team Canada. Like he's going to have to go up a tier, basically, to become, indispensable for Canada because his all-around game makes him an attractive option. But I don't think he did himself any favors by skipping the World Championships last year, and B,
no doubt,
he's not he doesn't stand out. In the sense, like Canada has a lot of two-way scoring options that produce at the same level or better than what Nick Suzuki does. And so if he wants to be in Milan, he really needs to find
upgrade. Another gear.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. Regarding the point per game guys in the league, among all the players who have played at least 35 games, so we'll include Alex Ovechkin in that threshold because he played with something like 38, 39, something like that. There was 39 players.
Yeah.
Who are point per game guys. So it's pretty it's great.
Nick's 35th in the league in scoring right now. 52 points is tied for 34th. And Kirill Kaprizov has played only 37 games. So it's like
And as for Caufield, it's a different type of difficulty, but you look at how, Boldy has not played a ton. He has not really popped out. It would be probably his main competition for a tournament like that. Not sure if the U.S. have the same sort of young reinforcements coming up the same way that Canada will be able to count on Bedard and Celebrini soon. But again, he will be, for better for worse, even though his overall game, I think, has greatly improved. I'm not sure he's done enough to show to the U.S. that he's going to be more than a specialist for them.
Well, in terms of just goal scorers, the U.S. did not bring Tage Thompson and did not bring Alex DeBrincat. So you have he has competition for guys that did not make the team.
And Brock
It's
Besser.
Matthew Nyes is a young guy who could play himself into that conversation at some point. But yeah, I mean, the team they have here is looking pretty close to the. I mean, I think Brock Nelson is kind of the Brad Marchand guy on their team in the sense that he might not be in Milan, and frankly has stood out for the wrong reasons in this tournament. And I think that might have been a mistake bringing him. But this is Josh Norris is another guy who could maybe play himself into the conversation. Brock Besser's not here. There's a lot of guys, and so I think.
Well, to me, Tage Thompson's the big one.
Tage Thompson is the big one, and frankly, probably should be here instead of Brock Nelson. He's good enough to be on this team right now. But I think Cole, in the same way, like he's going to have to become like really a top end scorer, like a 50-goal scorer. Like,
well, he might be close to 40 this year, and it's you mentioned DeBrincat. Well, heck, right now I take Caufield over DeBrincat. I take Caufield over Besser. I don't take Caufield over Tage Thompson, but they're playing different positions and they have different skill sets and different attributes, obviously. But
the thing is, they have Gensel, right?
Yeah.
And Gensel kind of is just a better version of Caufield, right? Like he's their scorer guy. He's kind of their smallish, have a knack for scoring guy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have, I know it sounds silly, but you can't have too many of those types of guys where it's just your primary job is to score and you don't really do a whole lot else. It's and not to say that Jake Gensel is a one-dimensional player, but I mean that's kind of his niche on this team is that,
Same for Kyle Connor.
Same for Kyle Connor, yeah.